Hello, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Monique Carriel. I'm just going to give colleagues a few moments to come into the room and we will get started. Okay, I know we've got quite a few people joining us today, so you are most welcome. If this is your first time with us on Bravery in the Boardroom, you are most welcome. I'd love to know where you're joining from today. Okay, so if you can let me know where you're joining from. I know we will have colleagues from up and down the country, and we may even have a few international colleagues joining us. So do let me know in the chat where you're joining from today, and we will get started in just a few moments. I'm very excited that we will be speaking with. I know many of you are here today because you are really keen to hear more of Cheryl's thought leadership on inclusive leadership and on HR practice. And we've got lots to come for you. So it'd be great to hear from you in the chat. Canvey Island, hello, welcome. Good to see you here, Janice, today. Really lovely to see you. I should say where I am as well, shouldn't I? So I'm in, at the moment, the sun is trying to break through. I'm in West London, so near Heathrow. The weather was very breezy yesterday, right? So yeah, it sounds like it's reasonably sunny in Essex as well. Great to have you here, Sandra from the West Midlands. You're most welcome. So Nikki, shall we click on? Let me introduce myself properly and then do a little bit of housekeeping before we carry on. So my name's Monique Carriel. I am co-founder of Bravery in the Boardroom. I started this movement back in 2022 because I am determined to see boardrooms and senior leadership more representative of the communities and people that they serve. And for me, it really is about how we turn the dial now on seeing more representation at a senior level, but most importantly, that we are seeing more inclusive cultures in the boardroom and beyond. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. Do connect with me if you haven't before. If you're not following me on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you there. If you're not following our Bravery in the Boardroom page, please do that now. Simon, you're most welcome, not too far away in Southeast London. And do check out our website if you want to too. Nikki, you'll hear me talking to my colleague Nikki in the background. She's keeping us on track today and making sure things run smoothly. So Nikki, shall we click on? Thank you. So a little bit of housekeeping. You're most welcome, Jazz. It's good to see you here as well. I welcome you all. The session is being recorded today. We know we've got colleagues, although we've put this on at lunchtime, we know we've got colleagues who really wanted to join us but couldn't be here at this time. So the session is being recorded. If you haven't already, and I'm sure you have, or you would have told me in the chat, right? Enable your audio so that you can hear us. And if you go to the top right-hand corner of your toolbar, I recommend that you pick speaker view. That's the best view for you. You'll be able to see myself and Cheryl front and center, and you'll be able to see these slides as well. Now, interaction, I encourage you to interact. I've asked you to let me know where you're joining from, but also as we are working through today's content, what resonates with you? What comes to mind? Absolutely for your questions. We've got time for audience questions as well. Drop it all into the chat. Let us know. And I can see people using the reactions already. Absolutely. Let's use those reactions, particularly for Cheryl when it's time to give her that welcome. And as I mentioned, do tag us or follow us on social media if you're not already. Nikki, shall we click on? Okay, so why are we here today? So one of the reasons why I asked Cheryl to join me this month is because it is Women's History Month. It was International Women's Day on last Sunday, just gone. And I wanted to really support the UN theme, what we see here of rights, justice, and action for all women and girls. And I think there's a part that we can all do. And the reason why I focus on leadership in my work is because actually we all can lead in our own way. So this isn't about a dictate as to how we should lead, but what's really important to me is whatever level you are working at, whatever level you lead at, whether that's inside or outside of work, there is always something that we can all do. And I'd like you to think about today as we walk through today's session, what is it that you can do to support and to see that actually we see all women and girls having that rights and justice. It may be something very small. Sometimes speaking up for a colleague, sometimes checking in if someone is okay. Sometimes that lovely small in the hand of someone's back virtually, about, come on, you can do it. That encouragement can really help people. But we know that in this country, even no matter how polarized or challenging it feels at the moment, we have more rights than many other women and girls around the world. So it's just a reminder of that. And as I said, that focus for me on is if we all lead bravely, if we all do what we can, if we are brave enough to take that next step, whatever it may be, it may well help a woman or a girl either here, really close to you, or somewhere else around the world. You may be that inspiration virtually. And I know Cheryl is an inspiration to many. And I'll be asking her, what does International Women's Day mean for her as well too? But I just wanted to frame that today as one of the reasons why we wanted to have the webinar, particularly in this month. Shall we click on, Nikki? So let's bring this into focus about women in leadership. Some of the key headlines that we have here for you. You know, why are we still talking about women, particularly when we think about the NHS, where I know the vast majority of those on the call today is where you're based. But when we think about the NHS, we know there's a higher than average percentage of women working across the NHS. However, what I always speak about is, although that third bullet point there, the NHS workforce is nearly 77% women, leadership and pay do not necessarily reflect that reality. I also know from my own experience as 20 years in the NHS and 5 years as an executive director, is that quite often it still feels, and you're operating in quite a male-dominated environment or traditionally male styles of leadership. Okay. So, but the stats that we see here, just under 50% of FTSE 350 board roles are now held by women, but yet fewer than 1 in 10 CEOs are women. That representation about women at the senior leadership level, and there's a fantastic report that we haven't quoted here, but the McKinsey Women in Work report, when it talks about the first ladder into leadership for women being broken. And if we think about intersectionality, this last bullet point here, progress for women, when we think about race into that dimension as well, we see far less representation. And I think if we think about intersectionality as a whole across, you know, what we're talking about here, I'd also pick up that traditionally women are quite often the primary parent or carer as well. So those dynamics and how that impacts onto women progressing into leadership, really pertinent point there, and something I would like to speak to Cheryl a little bit more about too. But as you know, if you've been with me on a session like this before, you know that I always like to set the scene before we get into the detail. So really fantastic to see so many people here with us today. Perfect. And can you ask Cheryl to unmute? Shall we get Cheryl to unmute? And then, so then she can speak. Loving the reactions here to welcome you, Cheryl. Okay, shall we kick off now? So, Cheryl, you're going to introduce yourself in a moment because I'm going to ask you some questions. But I really wanted to kick off with, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Well, thank you first and foremost, Monique, for inviting me back to Bravery in the Boardroom. And it is so nice to see such a warm welcome from everybody in the chat. And lots of familiar names that I can see there too that are coming up. So, I mean, International Women's Day, I think it is personal to me. I was raised by a woman who single-handedly carried our family. And I've been really surrounded by that sort of matriarchal influence. And many of you will have heard me talk about my grandmother, who's been particularly influential in my life. So I think from an early age, I kind of saw that resilience, the sacrifice and the disappointment, as well as some of the injustice and determination up close when I look at my mum's journey and others around me. And I think that shaped how I see leadership, fairness and opportunity, which really kind of sits at the heart of who I am as an individual. But it also made me aware that women still don't experience the same access or representation in many areas of life, and the picture becomes even more unequal when gender intersects with race and disability, and those layers of difference. That really can mean the barriers are higher and that progress is slower than it should be. And that's why it matters that we continue to mark International Women's Day. It's a moment really to actually recognize just how far we've come. Sometimes we spend a lot of time looking at where it is that we're trying to get to, and we don't really examine the
True.
progress. And I always apply that to my own career development and for people that I mentor and support, or people that are in my team that I manage. But I think it's also about us being honest about the work that still exists for us to continue to do. So for
Mhm.
me, the power of the day is collective action. When women support one another, they open doors and they amplify the voices of other women, especially those that don't get heard. We need to create the conditions for real change to happen.
For sure, for sure. And some really powerful points that you made in there. It's like you said, it's look back and look forward, isn't it?
It
Right?
is.
All right. So
Yes.
I know everybody wants to hear more about you, right? So what would you like us to know about you? You mentioned your grandmother in there. I was lucky enough to present you with that Bravery in the Boardroom Hall of Fame award. And, so emotional in what you shared there about your grandmother, what she means to you, your mum, and all of
Mm.
that. And you just touched on that there. But what would you like us to know about you and your career journey to your role as director at Evelina London?
So I think I'm going to keep this quite brief because
Yeah.
I'm keen to hear the questions and answers from others, but also because I've spoken quite publicly about my journey in lots of different forums. So I'd
Yes.
imagine there's people on here that have heard my story. Um, so I'll probably just pull out just a couple of things. So I think, firstly, I think I'd just say um, I haven't moved in a traditional sort of linear fashion,
Mhm.
and I've accepted roles where I didn't think I had sufficient experience, but have had line managers that have believed in me.
Yes.
Um, and it was the making of me really to take
Mhm.
bigger strides than maybe I would have done ordinarily. And I get frustrated when I hear staff themselves limiting and dulling their own sunshine.
Mm.
Um, but also because there's something about the fact that there's this expectation that people think that you go from a band six to a band seven to a band eight to, that it's not linear and it doesn't have to be that way. And
Yeah.
for my own personal experience, I came into the NHS as a band seven,
Mhm.
having worked as a trade unionist.
Mhm.
Um, and I think what I would say is that, I did the role at about band seven for a couple of years, realised I was capable of doing so much more than that, and
Mhm.
then moved on to an 8A role. And then I did that 8A role as head of employee relations. And after a year, I realised I could do so much more and I could make so much more of an impact. And during that time, I made a case because I was working with district nurses and things at that time, and I got Tim Campbell to come down,
Yeah.
which many of you will remember from The Apprentice.
That's right.
And one of the things he said to me, which has always stayed with me, is that he said, don't let anybody else stand in your sunshine.
Mm.
And it kind of made me think, actually, who's actually limiting me here? Is it me or is it them?
Mm.
And sometimes it's quite often a mixture of both.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important. And at that point, I just thought, I've done 12 months here. I already have done loads in the time that I've been here, including getting Tim down to empower lots of our
Yeah.
nurses
Yeah.
and challenge stereotypes and things. Um, and that's when I then took my deputy director post. Um, and I became a deputy director of HR
That
after
real
that.
jump.
So
Yeah.
you don't have to go from one band to the other. So that's one
Mm.
big key takeaway. And then the
Mhm.
second point I think I just wanted to raise was about um, I think my past experience prior to joining the NHS, which is well documented outside of here.
Yeah.
Um, I think that has really shaped me both personally and professionally. I think
Mhm.
having the experience of working in an organisation, public sector, um, where actually I was limited and prevented from progressing. Um,
Mhm.
I know how people and line managers, you can feel that sense of jealousy. and
Mm-hmm.
also how they can actually weaponize the policies and procedures in order to actually keep you down. And having experienced that at the age of 21, that
Mm-hmm.
experience has stayed with me and it's shaped the person that I am today, which I think in part has really driven the issues around fairness, injustice, and creating workplaces where people can actually thrive, because I know what it feels like to be on the opposite end of that.
Yeah, yeah. And may I ask a little follow-on question there, right? Don't
Yeah,
kill me,
that's fine.
right?
That's fine.
Um, what you just explained there that you experienced really early in your career, you
Hmm.
know, and I know that that could break someone, that could really break you
Absolutely.
and think, like you said, what Tim said there, actually, you could have let someone kill your sunshine off.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me a little bit more about how it propelled you, though? So, like you said there, it's actually made equity and fairness be at the root of all of what
Yeah.
you do. But how did you allow that not to break you?
Um, so I think, um, being completely honest, I think at
Mm,
the time, um, I was fresh out of university, and I think at the point of realizing that actually, I'd fought so hard to get into personnel. Personnel was so difficult to
yeah,
get into at that time. Um, and I think if it wasn't for the fact that, my mom is a really, really strong person, having my nan around me, my auntie Kem, who's absolutely been a force for reckoning, who you also have met. There were some really key individuals that were around me at that time. And I think when you work in an organisation, um, so I mean, I've spoken about it before. I worked for the Ministry of Defence, and the level of bullying that I was subjected to
hmm,
was really, really difficult to manage. And I think at the point they were blocking me from doing my CIPD, despite the fact it was a condition on me actually accepting the role. And the director of HR was very supportive. She was lovely. But the line manager I had was blocking me at every juncture. She came into the MOD at like 18 or something.
hmm,
Um, and had no formal qualifications. And actually, all of us as Black personnel officers, not one of us were able to actually make it to an EO level. All of us were stuck at AO level. Um, I wasn't expecting to become an EO, but I think all of that and watching all of that happen and being sent to Coventry
hmm,
and seeing how that feels to be sitting with someone who's supposed to be line managing you, who's supposed to support you, it really amplifies the fact that I recognise the power that line managers hold.
yes,
And
yes,
so I think when you've been on the receiving end, and now that I'm at the level I am now,
yes,
I absolutely am prepared to call that out. And I'm also
hmm,
prepared to actually really drive the actions that we need to take to kind of take it forward. So I think, my eyes are open to it, my ears are open to it, my heart is open to it.
hmm,
Um, and I think I can see, because we don't have the diversity at
hmm,
the senior level within our organisations in the way in which we'd like to, certainly from a race point of view.
yeah,
And it's even worse if you then intersect that with disability.
yes,
They just simply don't see the things because they haven't
hmm,
had the experience. And this is where lived experience can really
hmm,
drive the way
hmm,
in which we actually have the conversations that we have,
yes,
and make the decisions that we make.
yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for unpacking that in that way. Connecting that what you just said there. So, like you just said there, being a Black woman in a leadership role, you're bringing your lived experience and your expertise into senior spaces. Can I ask you, how have you faced any challenges in that being in your leadership role, being a director, and how you've navigated those?
Um, I think, I mean, assessing my own development needs
Yeah.
um, is critical. And anybody that I mentor, that's the first thing that I say that we kind of need to do. You
Hmm.
need to actually really assess your own development needs, and you need to be honest about what those things are. And you also need to be honest with yourself, and you need to listen to trusted people that are around you. But no, if everyone is saying the same thing, everyone can't be wrong. Um, it's a famous saying. My grandfather always used to say that to us. If everybody is saying something, everybody can't be wrong. So there is
Hmm.
something to actually kind of look at. I think the sort of active sponsorship in my skin, I think, is really critical. So um, many people will know that during the pandemic, I published an article in People Management that's called "The Importance of Sponsorship in My Skin." And I think
Hmm.
it's even more important when you sit in my skin, because the things that are afforded to others are not necessarily afforded to me,
Yep.
or people that look like me.
Hmm.
So I think, um, given that those opportunities afforded to others don't come easily and haven't come easily for me, being able to spot good leaders, good connectors, having colleagues and staff that you can aspire to,
Hmm.
and being able to just take on additional responsibilities of my choosing that align, obviously, with the organisational need. But sometimes it might not necessarily be sort of what you're doing that's related to your job per se,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
maybe it actually benefits the NHS system more broadly. And if you've
Yeah.
actually got directors and leaders, when you're going for jobs, I really encourage people to go and research the people that you are going to work with.
100%.
Do your due diligence and find out what these people are like, because that is going to be indicative about how much you're going to stretch, how much you're going to grow, how much you're going to be able to possibly take the next step if that's what you want, or even just to be able to fulfill your job to its full, remit. I think it's really important. So I said, I think that, and sort of recognizing when you need help,
Hmm.
and others that know, and spend time with people that know more than you do, because that's
Hmm.
where you grow. You don't grow from being in an echo chamber with
Hmm.
everybody who sits around saying exactly the same thing as you. There are people that obviously that I know that I will sit and have conversations with. And yes, there are things that I'm aligned on with them, but there's sometimes things that I actually don't agree with what they say, and I'm going to tell them that I don't agree.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, that's how we grow. You sit around people who are going to stretch your thinking and are going to take you places. You don't spend your time with people who um, spend all their time in the negative arena.
Listen, how many gems? So I feel like I want to ask the audience. I can see the chat going up. I can see the reactions
Okay.
going up. How many gems have you dropped already? I'm just going to summarize a few things that you've just said there. Bam, 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 right? Don't let anyone stand in your sunshine. For our
No,
NHS colleagues, you don't have to go from band to band. And that applies to other industries as well. You
better.
don't have to move linear up the ladder.
No,
Assess your own development needs. Seek active sponsorship. And Nikki, if you can take a note for me in the background there, can we get a copy of Cheryl's article? Love to share that with everyone who's on the call. We'll make
please
sure
do.
they get that. Yeah. Do your due diligence. I think that's where I saw the chat. Absolutely. Spend time with people who know more than you do and stretch your thinking. Yes. Okay. Right. So I wanted to
Yeah.
so many gems in there, Cheryl. I just wanted to summarize a few of those because I'm going to shift our questioning now onto just more about HR. Because as I said, you are an excellent thought leader on HR practice. What's it really like to work in HR? Can you myth bust a few things for us, please?
Um, so I think probably some of the things, I think HR is a bit like an iceberg. So
Hmm.
people see the small bit above the surface, but most of the work happens out of sight. And we're quite often quietly preventing problems long before anything goes wrong.
Hmm.
So I think that's probably the first one. Um, if I had to think of a second, I'd say HR is not there to protect the organisation at all costs, despite what the media, the narrative that people sometimes
Mm.
want um, to say. Our role is to make sure decisions are lawful, they're fair, they're consistent, and they're for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, that is not an easy journey. Sometimes we sit in the grey. It's not always black and white.
Yeah.
Um, and I think most HR work happens long before a problem appears. So
Hmm.
sometimes we're doing stuff around prevention, sometimes it is about advice and early intervention, and all of that rarely gets noticed, because we stop issues from escalating. Um, and then lastly, I think, what else would I say? I'd say HR doesn't make most of the decisions, but people blame us for a
Oh,
number of them. So
yes,
managers
so true.
managers lead on them, while
Mhm.
HR provides the framework, the challenge, and the guidance to get it right. They will sometimes follow our advice. Sometimes they will choose not to. I mean, it's quite a brave manager that decides that, I'm afraid, Cheryl, I don't agree with you. I'm going to go ahead, and after I've outlined the risks and set it out, um, it's unlikely that they're going to go down that road. But that's exactly the work that we do that staff don't
Mhm.
see,
Mhm.
and it's the work that doesn't get spoken about either.
Mm,
Um,
mm, And
and
I nod, and I can vouch for it in the sense of when I was a director, I shared my office with our HRD, our HR director, and I sat in the HR department actually because my team was round the corner. And
mhm,
from my own personal perspective, actually working in partnership with HR is how
is
I
is
see
key.
the way to work as a manager, as a senior leader in an organization, working in
Mm,
partnership, having those conversations, understanding, agreeing joint approaches, that's the magic, isn't it? If
yeah,
you can work
it
in
is.
that way. Just
It is.
picking up on that though, what do you love about working in HR?
Um, I think the fact that 2 days are never the same.
Hmm.
There are never 2 days that are the same. Um, I think I'm really privileged to be part of people's stories and careers,
Yeah.
and to influence change that improves the workplace. And I think when it's done well, I think HR has the power to create fairer systems and better cultures,
Hmm.
where people can genuinely thrive. So I'd say that, that's kind of what I love about HR. It's more about the fact that I can carry those stories into the boardroom, and I can actually use those stories to actually really make a difference.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, your job is part of your identity to some
Hmm.
degree.
Hmm.
And so I think people will, the fact that I get to be with people who I may well have sat on a panel and, help them to get a
Yes.
job. It might well be that, I've mentored someone. It might be that I've managed somebody in my team. It might be that I've connected with somebody and, been watching their career trajectory and supporting them at a distance.
Yeah.
Um, all of those things, I think it's a privilege. It's a bit like being a midwife. It's a privilege
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
been the person who brought somebody into the world.
Yeah, and
I,
I know we've got a number of colleagues who fit that description, what you were describing there. They're on this call today because they know that's what you've done for them, or that's what they've experienced from you. Even those conversations I know would have helped them. When you talk, and it's true what Ruby said in the chat there, your face did light up when you were talking about what you love.
yeah,
One
I
of the
do.
things that I know you're really passionate about, and I had the privilege of hearing you speak about last week as well, is about flexible working. And you've led on a big initiative at your hospital. Can you tell us a bit more about that and why it's so important to you?
So I've led on a piece of work where, looking at the sort of strategic drivers for
Mm,
actually really improving the workplace. We've created a program of work called Flex Evelina. Um, and so that's a cultural change program that looks at flexible working through an inequality lens. We're the only organisation to have actually done it in this way,
hmm.
which is why NHS employers had asked us to, share our story,
Hmm.
um, and also to do some filming for them. So please do go and have a look at the
Yeah.
NHS employers. Think First Flex toolkit. There's one for line managers, and there's also one for staff, so that they know what their rights and entitlements and things are, as
Mm,
well. Um, but I think, moreover, flexible working, it matters to me because it recognises people as whole human beings and not
hmm.
just by their job titles or grades. It allows us to see the realities of people's lives, their caring responsibilities, their health needs, their challenges, even just their desires. It may well be that, they want to go and, I don't know, play badminton on a Friday. There is so much that they kind of have to kind of look at. So I think it's about all taking all of that into account about how we actually respond with fairness and empathy to those things and look at how best we can support those people.
Mhm.
And I think secondly, um, it's not just a perk. It's a way to tackle
Mm.
inequality and giving those who often face systemic barriers a real chance
Yeah.
to thrive. And I think when we make work adaptable, I think we create a culture that values the contribution over conformity. And
Yeah.
that's how we build those truly inclusive workplaces.
Yeah. And it's so, you said something in there which is so true. We can have lives out of work. It doesn't mean
But,
that we are any lesser, that we're any less committed, right? And that
mhm,
actually the way being fit for the future, having a workforce that's fit for the future, absolutely is what you're speaking about there, isn't it? There was something you said last week, though, that I wanted to pull over to hear as well. And when you said about actually, though, inequity can start from the point of who feels able and empowered
exactly.
to make a flexible working request, right? And I mentioned that because there's equality in terms of that. Absolutely, let's have a flexible working approach that fits in with the way we do things around here. And that's how you launched it at Flex Evelina, right? And as you said, people can go and watch that video. But
They
that
can.
point that you made, that, but let's not miss that actually we might have an equity barrier before that, right? And to really have
Absolutely.
that think, yeah, who might not even get to the point of feeling enabled or safe enough to make a flex. People can get frightened and feel like I'm going to lose my job or, be seen as lesser when it comes to promotion opportunities if I only work part-time, as an
I think some of
example.
it's even before that, Monique. I think
Mm,
it's actually more even that, people are doing particular jobs and they are thinking that actually flexible working is not open to them. So just for the record with this whole audience,
yes.
flexible working is more than working from home.
Yes.
Flexible
Yes.
working is a
Yeah.
whole variety of working patterns. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many people I've met who said, I don't work flexibly. My line manager doesn't let me work flexibly. And then I ask them what they do, and then they tell me they work to 10 till 4, or they tell me I work term time only.
Yeah.
Um, they're thinking anything that means that they're not working from home means it's not flexible. That is not the case.
Hmm.
Flexible working is a whole range of flexible working patterns. If you're doing a 9-day fortnight, if you're working nights, there are going to be some patterns that are open to some staff groups more than others. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's unfair. It means it's appropriate for the job role. I'm a
Yeah.
HR director essentially. I don't have the opportunity to work nights and weekends. If I did, I think my job would be a lot easier because I wouldn't have to interact with anyone. But nobody is going to grant a HR director a role where they can actually work nights and weekends.
Company. Yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
fact that nurses can doesn't mean that I'm being treated unfairly. It means it's inappropriate for the type of role I'm doing. So we've
Mhm.
really got to get to grips with what does equity mean and what does equality mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that still people are still trying to kind of understand that.
And that was the key message actually that I heard from you as well last week. It was about let's open up our thinking. Let's be innovative, isn't it? And there were some real different initiatives on that call that were about innovation and just thinking outside, supporting managers to think outside the box. I think that's the kind of term that I took away from it. Coming back to so almost that's what you've been driving in your workplace. I also wanted to, I want to mention inclusive HR. So you're one of the co-founders of the inclusive HR movement. Please tell us a little bit about that. And before I stop talking for a second, everything that Cheryl's mentioning, we will ensure those links are shared in the follow-up email that we send, all right? So that people can dig in and have a look around after. But thank you to anyone who's finding it while we're talking. Really appreciate you dropping it into the chat as well. So yeah, tell us a bit more about inclusive HR.
So hashtag inclusive HR is a social movement for change. It's not a project. It's not an initiative. It's a social movement for change, and it's about embedding fairness, equity, and representation into every part of the employee experience. But more so than anything else, it's recognizing that HR doesn't just manage policies. We shape careers, influence culture, and we
Mm,
touch every stage of the employee journey from recruitment to exit. And there's something about us sort of looking in our own backyard, and the experience, having spoken with many, many, many HR staff across London in particular. And there was somebody that I was mentoring who was going through a really hard time. Um, and actually, I felt really quite troubled by some of the
mm,
things that she was experiencing.
mhm,
And I think from that, I went away and had a conversation with Rachel Tyler, who was the HPMA development director at that time. And
mhm,
I'd said to her, you know, um, in confidence, that there is these sorts of experiences that I was seeing across the board within the HR profession itself, and also the lack of diversity within HR itself. So HR spend a lot of time advising, guiding, and telling everybody else what they need to do, but I don't see much around what they're actually doing themselves,
yes, yes,
um, to look in their own backyard and look at what they can do to become more inclusive, to be anti-racist in their approach,
mhm,
to close some of the blind spots, but also recognizing that when people come into organisations, they walk in so excited to start a new job. All of us have
mhm,
been there, been excited to start a new job, and you're excited about the possibilities of all that's possible. And actually, then when you realise that you actually can't
mm,
progress, because of the systemic barriers, um, then I think that becomes really frustrating. The movement was kind of born out of all of that. And I think if HR itself reflects the diversity of the workforce, we become the biggest ambassadors for inclusion, anti racism, and discrimination, trying to prevent it,
mhm,
through modelling the behaviours, practices, and the decisions that create genuine, fair workplaces. So I think being truly inclusive isn't just the right thing to do, it drives better outcomes, it strengthens engagement, and ensures everyone feels seen, they're valued, and they're able to contribute their best. But I think HR, we're missing a trick if we don't recognise the value, and the level of influence we have, given we touch every part of the
mm,
employee cycle. If we can't do it for ourselves, how can we possibly do it for the directorates and services and
mhm,
teams and things that we're actually supporting, guiding, and advising? We have to be the biggest ambassadors of the change. And I think following that, um, talking to Peter Cheese, who's the chief executive of the CIPD, and I remember him saying to me, during the pandemic, Cheryl, you really need to find your voice. And that conversation with him really turned it around, because on the basis of that, I then published the very first article I ever wrote,
mhm,
and that was about, HR needing to lead by example
mhm,
in terms of EDI. And so, I mean, that's available. It was published in People Management in 2021.
mhm,
Um, and again, I think that kind of just went, everybody kind of like read it and people knew about it, from that point onwards. And that's what led us to the place we are now, where I established the 5-step challenge to change, which is a tool that you can use within your HR department or
mhm,
any other department, to actually really examine your own bias and look at what the actions are you can take to actually properly support your staff, to actually develop and thrive. And the evidence is out there, because there are organisations that have actually undertaken it. There's been 85 organisations across the country that have actually signed up to do that 5-step challenge to change, and have gone right from step 1 through to step 5. Um, we now are at the stage where we need to kind of collate all of that evidence so that
mhm.
we can put it on the interactive map, so it's available for people to access.
To that real driving change, like you said, within HR and HR practice, but also sharing that best practice and learning at the
Yeah.
same time. Now, I've got a brilliant question for you about AI that I'm going to come to in a moment, but I just want to pick up. We've had a few questions come through in the chat, and I think there's a couple here that combine. So, listening to what you were just saying there and the advice you were giving about what it is you can do when you are looking at your own HR teams, what you can be doing differently to really
Mhm.
see that fairness happening within the actual HR teams as well. If I ask you that question, so pulling out and looking at an organization as a whole,
Mhm.
what would you say organizations can genuinely do to really break the term that was used here? I think in the question from Darren was to break the old boys club. But I think what he's saying there is what you were talking about, challenge biases, stop the
Yeah.
same old, stop recruiting in the same mode that you've had all the time. And I know I wanted to ask you that question about what is it organizations should be focusing on, prioritizing to see that shift at senior leadership level, so more representation. What would you say to that? Because I think they're sort of getting at the same thing. What is it organizations could be doing more of?
So I think the first thing is that we do need to be data driven. So
Mhm.
I think that we already have data. The data is there, not just only in terms um, of hard data, but there's also data in terms of people's stories. I'm not sure how many stories you need to hear, how many tears you need to see, how much blood you need to see
Mm.
shed before you actually feel moved to take action.
Mhm.
Um, And I think there is something about the people that we recruit. We can't simply just be looking for the skills that are required to do the job. Most of the issues that we have and that we see at an organisational level within HR are around people's management and leadership capabilities and their ability to manage, have difficult conversations, and sometimes just to have human conversations. They're not even
Mhm.
difficult, they're human conversations. Um, and being able to show that empathetic, caring, thoughtful um, leadership style that means that actually you're looking at the blind spots that others have, and you're actively taking steps to actually close them. I don't
Yes.
profess to know everything,
Mhm.
and I think leaders need to be open about that and be vulnerable. Actually, it's okay not to know everything, but what's not
Mhm.
okay is not to do anything about it. Once you
Yes.
realise that you have those gaps, you need to actually now actively start going to go and find out, try and understand, So, I think to myself, when we first needed to start really doing work to support sort of like a trans inclusive type workplace. Well,
Mhm.
I don't profess to know everything there is to know about that. So I started to go and join groups
Mhm.
where there are people that are trans.
Mhm.
Um, and if you don't have that in your own life, then actually sometimes you've got to step out of your own comfort zone and think to yourself,
Mhm.
where is it I'm going to go and get that? And if that means that I need to join a group, and it's a group on LinkedIn, whether it is it was a focus group somewhere, or it's a workshop somewhere, um, or I want to sort of like maybe contribute to a network where I can actually go and listen and understand. We need to listen with fascination and be willing to actually be open to hearing about different perspectives.
Yes.
Um, and we need to welcome those. And I think when we dumb down on those things, I think that puts us in a really dangerous position because we're actually managing a really diverse group of people in our organisations. And if we want them to deliver the best care to patients, I certainly want everybody on this call and their families and everything to receive the best care should they find themselves in one of our hospitals. I don't want them to experience really poor care because
Mm.
the teams themselves don't get on and they're not talking to each other, and
Yes.
miscommunication and all of that leads to patient harm. Why would I advocate for that? That's not what I'm looking for. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think we need less emphasis on some of the technical stuff because you can kind of assess that quite easily.
Yeah.
What we don't do is actually properly test the ability of leaders to actually really manage a diverse set of people.
Mhm. To that
um,
inclusive leadership capability
yeah,
in action.
absolutely. And then I think the other bit is around just actually, I think we almost need to recruit for courage and bravery. I
Mm.
think that actually we need brave leadership. We
100%.
need people who are willing to step, to put their head above the parapet sometimes on some issues. I am prepared to die in a ditch over. There are other issues I'm not so prepared to. but
Mm,
actually you need to be clear about what you stand for. And I think we've got a lot of leaders in some spaces that actually don't appear to stand for anything.
mm.
And even in the face of injustice, they still don't stand. And so if you're not prepared to stand in the face of injustice that is literally slapping you in the face, well, what confidence am I going to have if I'm under your leadership that when it really matters for me, that you're really going to actually stand up and be counted?
There's a connection in what you shared before and what you're saying here. To start, a couple of questions I saw there, Cheryl. You've answered it in such a powerful way about, what can I do? And I changed these into what do you do, but what can we do, right? What is it I can do if I am working with or led by leaders who don't display the qualities and values that you're touching on here? I've seen a
Mm,
comment from Jazz in the chat there about, unfortunately, not all leaders are as inclusive as Cheryl, and it's absolutely true. But I circle back to what you said, something at the beginning about doing your due diligence, right?
yeah.
So whilst we're not saying to anybody resign tomorrow, what
No.
we are also pointing out though is sometimes you will have your value set isn't modeled by who, the leaders you're working
No.
with are not leading by example. And especially as you step into more senior roles, that can be much more of a factor, right?
But I think that the I'd say one of the key things that you need to do, because there'll be a number of things that you need to do. One of them is find your allies.
Mhm.
There is always going to be people that are in senior leadership roles across the organisation, within your teams, that actually share very similar values and have a moral backbone. And I think that you need to find who those people are that are your allies. I absolutely recognise that I will have allies in the workplace. I also have people that will actively work against me as well. And there are people that are constantly challenging, and also trying to find a way of not doing the difficult stuff. Um, and I think that you have to kind of surround yourself with the people that are going to help you to grow the skill set to be able to challenge those individuals, but also know that you've also got allies who are really true active allies, not people that just have, name themselves
Committed.
that. And just to be clear, it's to be an ally, it's not for you as an individual to describe yourself as an ally.
Mhm.
It's for others, it's bestowed upon you. If you've listened to John Amici talk
Yeah.
about what it is to be anti-racist, it's about actually, an allyship is about actually it being bestowed upon you. It's not for you to walk around deciding that you are an ally. Your actions will speak louder than your words, and it will
Mhm.
be noted by other people, and they will know who their allies are in this space.
Mhm. 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 Very, very, very true. Very true. So I wanted to ask you about looking forward as
Mm.
well, right? So looking forward, a term I'm using a lot is about workforces being fit for the future. So really wanted to hear your reflections on looking at current practice. Why do you think it's important for staff to embrace AI? We're hearing about it all the time, right?
Yeah, we are. And, it is something new that's come into play. And it really does make me think, though, and it makes me chuckle as well at the same time. So I think to myself, when I started at the MOD, um, I absolutely knew where the post room was. I'm like, even in the organisation I work now, I don't even know where the post room is. Who even opens letters and stuff from people anymore? We just don't.
Mhm.
Emails and things kind of come. It's just so. I think it's just being aware that change is actually happening, and I think, um, efficiency and focus. I think AI can take on those routine and repetitive tasks, and it does free us up so that we can focus on that more higher value work, that needs human judgment, because everything is not going to be taken over by AI. But I think we need to learn to work in partnership with it,
Mhm.
um, so that it helps us, it doesn't take over what we do. And,
Mhm.
we have to remember we're in the business of healthcare, we deal with people. Um, so it's never going to fully take over everything, but there certainly is an opportunity to do things more efficiently. I think secondly, the other bit is around the sort of better decision making. And I think
Hmm.
when AI is used responsibly, I think it can provide insights and patterns that help staff make informed decisions, and evidence based decisions, because actually you can plug in your questions and actually get it pulls all the data from the various sources, which allow you to then start to kind of think about what your response is, or what it can help you with your own understanding. And then lastly, probably the continuous learning and adaptation kind of element. I'd say embracing AI encourages staff to develop new skills,
Hmm.
and it helps you stay relevant and to contribute to shaping how technology supports rather than replaces roles, is probably what I would say. So, I mean,
So, mm,
the tips, I think I'd say start small,
yeah.
with specific tasks, pair AI tools with, the human element and human oversight, and commit to learning sort of iteratively and be prepared to make mistakes. You'll learn from them. I didn't know much about AI, and I had somebody contact me on LinkedIn, who's absolutely fantastic, and she is so passionate about AI. And then I said to her, would she give me a session on
Yeah.
how to actually use it? She took me through and actually explained a number of different programs, including ChatGPT, as to how you could actually use it. Um, and it has just been so helpful. So that whole thing, as Jeanette's just put in, self-learning is really important. But I think
Hmm.
you share the successes and share the lessons across the team and encourage your team to do it as well. So I'd say just learn, make mistakes, do it bit by bit. You haven't got to sort of like learn everything in one hit. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
dip your
think
toe in.
that's it.
Nothing,
That's it,
nothing
isn't
to
it? Dip
lose.
your toe in, and it's an additional tool. It's not the be all and end all. So I think where some of the conversations or apparent behaviors and adoption are, this is now all we use. And I think that's what you're saying there is no, use it alongside your own expertise, ethics, and understanding, right? Understand how you use it alongside what you're doing. Yeah. So thank you very much for that. So we've had quite a few questions come through on the chat, which I've been trying to weave in, okay, as we've been speaking. But one of the main ones I think that I almost want to kind of finish up with that last point for you. You've offered so much, it's almost been like an online mentoring and insight session, right? And I just want to close off with that. What final message do you want to leave for our aspiring senior leaders in the audience today? I know we've got a number of HR professionals who really look up to you and admire your journey and your style of leadership in HR. We've also got a lot of colleagues who are underrepresented, right? What would you want
Yeah.
to share with them about those final top tips for progressing their careers into senior leadership roles, particularly around HR?
I'd say stop waiting for permission.
Mm,
Senior roles rarely come to those who wait. You have to kind of claim your space, make your ambitions known, take some calculated risks. Sometimes, I always say to people, the opportunities are not going to fall on your lap.
mm,
There's times where I live in South London. I've taken a job that's over in North London, two trains, two buses each way,
mhm,
at one point. Um, and flexible working was really critical, to me at that point. And I was quite fortunate that the leader that I worked for at that time, she herself worked um, did flexible working, and allowed me to do that. And hence I've had a flexible working pattern for about 10 years now. So,
mhm,
um, you know, I'd say, yeah, take those risks and recognise that opportunity won't sit comfortably always.
mhm.
I think build your influence, not just your experience.
Yeah.
Know the politics, find your allies, as I was talking about earlier, and learn to make uncomfortable conversations work for you. Technical skill alone is not going to get you to the top.
Mhm, mhm.
And for HR, leadership specifically, I'd say don't hide behind the policies. Your credibility comes from shaping the culture, challenging leaders, um, making tough decisions, being visible, um, and you know, making decisions that drive fairness, not just enforcing the rules quietly. I think
Mhm.
that's really part of what makes the difference between a dynamic HR leader as opposed
Mm.
to someone who just kind of goes along with what the policy says.
Yes.
Actually, sometimes you need to operate beyond what the policy says.
Oh my goodness. What a point to end on, right? What a point to end on there. And it's why, because I'm always talking to you on WhatsApp, right? I'm always sending you these messages, Michelle, I love when you, but it really is about because one of the things that I think is so important, and having had my own NHS career, is there's so much of the what out there, right? There's so much of the what. There are
Hmm.
not many leaders who are holding space, who are in really challenging senior roles like yourself, who are really talking about the how, right? And you've shared with us today the how on how to navigate your own career, right? So, how to do that, how to overcome big challenges. That was a massive obstacle you faced really early in your career, how it's really propelled your values. And look at what Megan's saying here. I needed to hear this. Yes, right?
Oh, that's lovely,
Right?
Megan.
Right? And then talking us through, what is it really like leading today? What is it really like being in HR? What is it really like grappling with AI? Right? Really bringing that to what's the reality of managers trying to navigate a really challenging environment, particularly in healthcare? What are some of those tools that can help you with that? But your understanding of, I know it's not easy, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of the how, right? Couldn't have asked for more to say, Cheryl. So I think, thank you so, so much. I hope we can show Cheryl our appreciation. We're seeing it in the chat, but apps couldn't have asked for anything more today. Really appreciate you giving your
No problem.
time. And I know you don't just sit here and spout what you want. I know that you take time to prepare for what you wanted to share here as well. You're amazing. And I'm a finance person. So we're crossing those boundaries, right? We're crossing those boundaries. So thank you so much. And as I said to everybody, we will be sharing the links of anything that was mentioned. Me and Nikki will go back through the chat and the conversation. Cheryl, of course, if there's anything else you want to share, you'll pass that over to us and we will have the recording ready within about a week, most probably. That will go out to everybody who's registered. Okay. If you want to share that with colleagues, there were gems in here, we will do that. Okay.
And if I can just ask that, everybody that is on the call, please can you talk about bravery in the boardroom on
Yeah.
LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And can you also share whatever, nuggets you felt that were helpful that you got from today's session? Everybody's voice counts. And actually, sometimes
Absolutely.
you don't know just who you're influencing and how you might just make a difference to somebody else just by sharing what you've heard and what you've learned today and any other day. So please do
Absolutely.
use your
Thank you so
platforms.
much. Thank you, Cheryl. Nikki, if you can just pop the last two slides up. As we do that, Cheryl, please do drop your LinkedIn handle into the chat for everybody, because I know you've got a lot of followers, but there may be a few people here who are not connected with you. Let's make sure that they are, because I'm sure they'll want to hear more from you in the future. So
Thank you.
I have, I think, 60 seconds to close this session. So Nikki will be dropping some links into the chat for you. If you've been here before, we want you to take a listen to that. We have an insights report on YouTube. It's a video report. That chapter 5, being in a state of readiness. 12 minutes, I think it is, gems upon gems about what can help you to be ready to make that next step in your leadership journey. We'll also be sharing the link to our YouTube channel. You'll know that I host a podcast as well. And this is where, after we share the recording with you, you'll also be able to access that recording on our YouTube channel as well. So Nikki will drop those links into the chat and you'll also get a follow-up email, if not today, because I've got to switch off and do my childcare runs in the afternoon. But if it's not today, we will make sure we have that email ready for you on Monday morning. Nikki, shall we click on? Please, 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 as Cheryl was saying there, absolutely, if there are takeaway points you had that resonated with you today, please do share them on LinkedIn. If you want to quote Cheryl, tag her in as well. She dropped gems galore. But if you can take a moment to scan this QR code, or Nikki is going to drop the feedback link into the chat. This is our short feedback form. We really value your feedback. It helps us to make sure we're focusing on the topics that you want to hear about. Also gives us some feedback on what your top takeaways were from today's session. Okay, so we'll leave that on screen for a few moments. We'll also drop that link into the chat and it will come out to you on that email. Really appreciate you sharing your reflections with us today as well. Nikki, are you okay with getting that into the chat for me? I might have missed it. So if it's dropped in there already, brilliant. Thank you so much. And it is 1:30. So as I said, I will keep the meeting open for the next 30 seconds just to give you time to scan that QR code or to pick the link up off the chat. But thank you so much to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. Really good to see you. Hi, Ivy. Have a good weekend. Everyone who I didn't get to say hello to who's coming up in the chat, really good to see you here. Thank you so much. And to everyone who shared this with a colleague and encouraged them to join, really appreciate your support as well. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and we look forward to welcoming you to the next session. Thank you so much.